Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman.
Hello everybody and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. My name's Chris.
And I'm Linz.
And we are here to tell you an interesting story today. And Linz, let me tell you, today's case, it's a real thriller. About potentially quite a dangerous subject, but make sure that you don't scream. Don't worry though, because you are not alone. I am here with you on this journey through the files. So if you just keep the faith... it won't be so bad. Yes, if you haven't guessed yet, today's topic is to do with the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. Or rather, not MJ, but the menagerie of animals that he collected over the years, and one very specific animal.
Bubbles!
Yes.
Yes!
So, with a He-Hee and a Shamona, Linz, tell me quickly, who was Michael Jackson?
The king of pop. He was one of the biggest pop artists, probably the biggest pop artist of all time. I think we can say that. A bit eccentric. He had Neverland. He invited children there, went through a bit of a nasty case. But yeah, anyways, let's stay away from the true crime side of Michael Jackson today. Although this is the case, I'm guessing, of Michael Jackson's missing monkey.
It is.
Yes.
Linz, were you or are you a fan of MJ?
I wouldn't say I was a fan, but I like a bunch of his hit songs, let's just say that. And I do appreciate his time in the Jackson 5. Still rocking some Jackson 5 now and again.
I loved Michael Jackson.
I feel like you would have loved Michael Jackson, to be honest. Like, I look at you and I think, this man probably likes Michael Jackson.
What?
Oh, I tell you what I was a fan of.
What?
Moonwalker, the Sega, the Mega Drive game, and Bubbles was in that.
He was.
Oh, God, I loved that game.
I loved it. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I had I was given a hand-me-down cassette version of Bad and a Thriller. I listened to them on repeat. Like, Michael Jackson was everywhere and was the biggest pop sensation of all time.
Hold on. Don't just skip away from that. Don't we get like a little rendition snippet of one of your favorite songs? How about Bad? I feel like I'm in the mood for some MJ, but we obviously can't play any.
I don't think we even have the rights to do that, to be honest. I think I can get away with Shamon.
Fair enough. That's acceptable.
So do you think that collecting animals is a big thing for celebrities?
I think it probably was more so in the 80s and before that. Like, I know a lot of people had like exotic pets, like things that you just could not keep, like tigers and basically big cats were really popular. Crocodiles, that was another one. A lot of people had crocodiles. Maybe back then, but not so much now. Now it's really frowned upon, and rightly so. But
yeah, we look back at it now as like,
mental.
What were these people doing?
It's just like basically you have so much money that you don't know what to do with it, and then you wake up and have these mental ideas that you would as a kid. Like, wouldn't it be great to have a tiger in my house? And then they're so rich, they just would get one, I suppose. And yeah, it's weird how that was so acceptable.
So obviously you know the obvious one, but what animals do you think that Michael Jackson owned and kept at the Neverland Ranch?
Oh, he had, at the ranch. I didn't actually know he had more, but come to think of it, yeah.
So you had to freestyle. What would you think? If you were MJ, what would you buy?
Well, I'd have the basic things, like I'd have a bunch of like miniature horses. I don't know why that came to me. You know those are they ponies?
The Shetland ponies.
Yeah, with the massive heads.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of those. They're quite fun. Could put like a unicorn horn on them. I imagine MJ would do things like that. I feel like he would have something insane, like a giraffe or something. Okay. What else would he have? He obviously had monkeys. Did he have more? Maybe he had those little spider monkeys. Those are quite fun. God, he had such endless money then. He could have had anything. Why am I thinking he had like an elephant or something crazy?
Well, according to celebritypets.net...
oh man, I'm going to go on that right away after this episode.
Michael Jackson owned several exotic birds, including his favourite, Ricky the parrot.
Oh.
An elephant named Gypsy.
I knew it.
And Gypsy was given to him as a thank you by Elizabeth Taylor for allowing her to host her wedding at Neverland Ranch.
How is she gifting Elizabeth Taylor? Just thought I'll just get a poacher to grab me an elephant. Oh, maybe from a circus or something.
Maybe.
But yeah, what kind of a thank you is that? I don't get thank yous like that from you.
If I could give you an elephant, I would. No, I wouldn't.
It sounds like you were going to birth one for me. If I could give you an elephant.
Michael Jackson owned 2 tigers, one named Thriller, after his hit album, and one named Sabu, after the ECW hardcore legend, I assume. He had large enclosures full of spiders.
Ew.
Yeah. And reportedly, during his trial, he was limping. And he said it was because he was bitten by one of his tarantulas. Whether that's
that
true
is
or not.
horrific.
He had 4 giraffes.
I knew he would have something like that.
Rambo, Princess, Jabba Jar, and Annie Sue.
Rambo and Annie Sue. That's amazing.
He had a huge collection of reptiles, including a boa constrictor named Muscles and a python named Madonna.
Like he has such like opposing names like Rambo and Mildred and Madonna and freaking Muscles.
He owned several alligators.
I knew it.
A ram named Mr. Tibbs.
A ram. Yeah. That is adorable.
He had 2 llamas, Louie and Lola.
Aww.
He had alpacas and zebras. I did ask about the zebras, but I was told that it didn't matter if they were black or white.
You're so stupid.
He also had a large collection of dogs, and most famously, he owned several monkeys and apes, including Bubbles the chimpanzee. So today we're going to be looking into the case of whatever happened to baby Bubbles. This was spurred on by one of your musings the other day when we were just chatting, when you just kind of asked this question. And I just let it hang there. And I thought, no, I won't grab my phone right now and look. I will tell you what happened to the chimp.
Yes!
So you kind of touched on this before, but my most enduring memory of Bubbles is from a Mega Drive game, Moonwalker, that's a Sega Genesis for any Americans out there. And when you completed a level, Bubbles would run up to Michael and jump on his shoulder when Michael did his victory pose. Bubbles was not just virtual, though. He was a real chimp born in 1983 in a monkey and ape breeding facility, which was primarily supplying primates for animal testing.
Aww.
Bob Dunn, who was one of the most famous Hollywood animal trainers, arranged the purchase, or what some have called a rescue, of Bubbles at 8 months old from a facility in order to go and live with Michael Jackson. Let's pause on the Bubbles thing and just talk about Michael for a moment. Now, in 1983, when he acquired Bubbles, Michael Jackson was at the height of his fame. Thriller had just been released the year prior, and he had exploded into not only a megastar, but into the king of pop. Obviously, prior to this, he'd been a member of the Jackson 5 of his brothers, and he'd pretty much known nothing but stardom from a very early age, from the Jackson 5 to his early solo career through to where he was now, at quite literally one of the most famous people in the world. Nothing, though, would compare to Thriller's success. It has sold, from my research, at least 70 million copies, and is quite literally one of the greatest pop albums ever released. I mean, when I was researching this, I did listen again, and I was like, just listen to this track listing. So side A, remember, this was a cassette. Wanna Be Starting Something, Baby Be Mine, The Girl Is Mine, which was a duet with Paul McCartney, Thriller. Side 2, Beat It, Billie Jean, Human Nature, Pretty Young Thing, The Lady in My Life. This is just hit after hit.
Yeah, he's a hit machine.
And the
Damn.
public thought so too. Although I did find out that Thriller wasn't the initial release. It was only released later on when the album sales were waning, and then it blew it up even more in popularity.
Damn.
But Jackson was elevated to a godlike status and became increasingly isolated from real life. It's been well publicised and criticised about his affection for children, but he also felt at home with the animals as well. Like a moonwalking Dr. Dolittle, Jackson began to collect a zoo of animals and felt that he related more to them than with humans. Now, during recording sessions with Freddie Mercury, the Queen singer, on what became a aborted duet together, the Queen singer became frustrated because Jackson insisted on bringing his pet llama into the studio. The sessions were cancelled, but when they were restarted, Jackson promised he wouldn't bring his llama, but there was now a chimp in the recording studio.
Was that more acceptable than the llama? Maybe.
Well, according to author David Wigg, Michaels made Bubbles sit between them and would turn to the chimp between takes and ask, "Don't you think that was lovely?" Or, "Do you think we should do that again, Bubbles?"
Oh my god, it's like he was in the room. Fuck, that was creepy.
And after a few days of this, Freddie just exploded and said, "I'm not performing with a fucking chimp sitting next to me each night!" So yes, Michael had now acquired Bubbles the Chimp, who would follow him everywhere, dressed in human clothes. But this wasn't a publicity stunt. Jackson lived with the chimp at the family home. So at this point in his life, Neverland Ranch wasn't a thing. He was still living with the rest of his family.
Oh, his... Okay, oh right, wow.
Had his family had their family mansion that they had.
I was just imagining him in a semi-detached with the rest of the Jacksons. And a monkey on the couch.
Not too far off from that, to be honest. Jackson would later go on to describe Bubbles as his first child. And he treated him as such, having the chimp sleep in his room in a crib. He would watch movies with Michael in his personal theatre, ate with the family at the dining table, and even used the family toilet.
Wow. So he was a chimp.
Chimp.
And he was a male.
Yes.
How... Don't they get quite violent, though?
They do, and we are leading towards that.
Okay, we'll get to that.
When they're younger, not quite so much.
Yeah, they're lovely when they're younger, but...
In the lead up to Bad, released in 1987, Bubbles was ubiquitous everywhere that Michael Jackson went, and was just one of the many eccentricities that the tabloids loved to report on about quite possibly the most famous person in the world. Tabloid headlines ran wild here, and here are some of the paraphrased highlights.
Michael Jackson sleeps in an oxygen chamber. He believes that it will allow him to live until 150. I heard he cloned himself to live forever. Michael Jackson's nose falls off.
Well, I heard that he tried to buy the Elephant Man's bones.
Michael bleaches skin to appeal to Middle America.
I heard he cloned himself. Oh, yeah, but it went wrong because he cloned himself white. Like, what I want to know is, what the deal with the sleeping with the little boys in your room?
Michael Jackson pays $150,000 to voodoo witch doctor to kill Steven Spielberg as revenge for not casting him in Peter Pan.
I heard he tried to buy the Elephant Man's bones.
The Elephant Man's bones?
Well, I heard he was trying to buy our crocodiles.
Jackson takes hormones to keep his high voice. Wacko Jacko's at it again.
Wacko Jacko.
Wacko Jacko.
Wacko Jacko.
Well, I heard he brings a fucking monkey into the studio. Michael Jackson in trouble with the law again. Well, what I want to know is what's up with him and Macaulay Culkin. King of pop, more like king of opioids.
We can't dance like that and be straight.
Michael Jackson, he's a wrong'un.
Michael Jackson, very good friend. Very, very good friend. We're the greatest of friends.
Well, I heard he's a really nice guy, and you should all just leave him alone, you big loonies.
Just leave me alone. Leave me alone.
I don't know why it just got me when you said tries to bite the elephant man's bones. It's like, that's fucking creepy, dude.
So, Linz, can you please read this quote from Quincy Jones, who was Michael Jackson's producer on his most famous albums?
The public perception of what Michael is as a human being has been highly exaggerated. Those articles are hard for me to relate to. For instance, Bubbles is more fun than a lot of people I know. I saw Bubbles at a wedding in a tux. He has great table manners.
All of these things that was said about Michael came together to form the picture of Wacko Jacko in the press, a moniker that Jackson absolutely hated but stuck with him for the rest of his career. Probably the most enduring Weird Michael moment was his association with Bubbles the Chimp, most likely because it was the only one that there was any actual truth to. The National Enquirer, which if you're unfamiliar with, is an American paper famous for being absolutely chock full of lies, much like our British tabloids, and famously wrote that Michael Jackson's longtime rival Prince had used his mind powers to affect Bubbles' behaviour and turn him crazy. The story quotes Michael as saying,
What kind of sicko would mess with a monkey? This is the final straw. Poor Bubbles.
What kind of sicko would mess with a monkey? So what, Prince was his rival?
well, I'll get out of that in a second, but obviously that wasn't an actual quote from Michael. And when he heard the rumour, he was beside himself with laughter, according to his staff, which is quite nice, really, because all of the other rumours seem to have deeply hurt him. And on top of it all, Michael and Prince were not actually rivals. They were actually friends. And they almost released the single Bad together. It was nearly a duet.
They should have made that would have been amazing.
It would have, but if there's a really amazing clip out there where Prince is saying, so I listened to the music and I read the lyrics and I said, right, so the first line here is, your bud is mine. You're not saying that to me and I'm not saying that to you, so we got a problem.
Oh, Prince.
So speaking of Bad, it was released in 1987, a classic follow-up to Thriller, and my personal favourite Michael Jackson release. Bubbles appeared in the videos for Bad, Librarian Girl, and Leave Me Alone, which also, the video parodies a lot of those rumours. And Michael actually dances with the Elephant Man's bones in that video to kind of parody these rumours.
So he didn't ever want to buy the Elephant Man's bones?
Don't believe so.
Because he did have a lot of weird stuff.
He did have a lot of weird stuff, but I think...
But he's like, I got a lot of weird stuff, but that's not one of them. Okay.
Bubbles accompanied Michael on his world tour, and he was cared for during this time by the animal trainer Bob Dunn in any country the creature could enter. The UK said no, but other countries like Japan were absolutely fine with it.
I feel like Japan would love a monkey to come along with Michael Jackson.
I just can't get away from Japan, can I? Every story
No.
I do. Anyway, in Japan, after showing off at a shrine that Bubbles had learned how to moonwalk, Bubbles followed Michael Jackson to the Osaka City Hall, where he and MJ had tea with the mayor of Osaka.
It's brilliant.
Now, all seemed well with Jackson and Bubbles, but primatologist Jane Goodall wrote that while some chimpanzees can seem cute, funny, and even lovable, to think that they would make good pets is inaccurate. She notes that at about 6 to 8 years of age, the animals become strong and indocile, and guess how old Bubbles was?
On the cusp.
So let's listen to Michael's other sister, LaToya, comment on the situation.
Bubbles at one point became extremely strong, so he wasn't this little baby that would slap you and can get away with it. They were powerful slaps. They could knock you out. Sometimes he would slap and everything would fly off the table. Yes, and then he'd grab the chandelier and jump and swing on it and then jump on the next table. He goes, Bubbles, no.
And that's how Neverland Ranch came about.
You're kidding me.
So Bubbles was doing what chimps do, and was becoming increasingly unruly even when they moved into Neverland Ranch. And this was all well and good, but considering that chimps have been known to tear faces off humans, and Michael Jackson had now begun to have his own children at this point, it was decided that a nearly adult ape with free roam of a mansion with young children around was probably not a good idea.
No, that is a terrifying idea.
I mean, it sounds like the start of a kind of generic Adam Sandler movie, but it could also
It sounds like a horror movie, dude.
It could also turn into its very own thriller.
Oh, God.
So it was agreed with Michael that Bubbles had become, in his words, pugnacious and posed a danger to those around him. So Jackson was distraught but knew it was best for all involved, so he moved out. Jackson at this point, though, did acquire 2 other baby chimps.
Really? He doesn't learn from the first one.
Max and Action Jackson.
Action Jackson. He is really friggin' good at naming things.
Now, during his 2005 trial, Michael commented that the chimps
Run around and help me clean the room. They help me dust and clean the window.
But his housekeepers disagreed, saying that all they did was hurl shit at the walls. So what happened to Bubbles then? Bubbles was initially moved to Bob Dunn's ranch in California, where Michael and his children would reportedly visit Bubbles from time to time. But rumours once again started again in the tabloids when Michael Jackson was put on trial for diddling kids for the second time. The rumours were in the tabloids that Bubbles had attempted to commit suicide after hearing the news, but this was, of course, not true, much as the court found the accusations against the King of Pop both times with their non-guilty verdicts. In 2004, Bob Dunn closed his ranch, and Bubbles was moved to the Center for Great Apes in Florida and lived along with many other apes who had been involved in showbiz. A lot of the apes who were involved in Planet of the Apes ended up there. So at this time, when he moved there, Bubbles was 4.5 feet tall, weighed 185 pounds, and had the strength of 3 adult human males packed into a small frame.
God.
During all of this, Michael Jackson maintained ownership of Bubbles, which, as far as I can tell, transferred over to Michael's family after his death. Regardless, though, the Jackson family have continued to contribute to Bubbles' care over the years.
Okay.
Michael did plan to visit him, but cancelled, and then his life just began to spiral towards his eventual death. He never got a chance to rearrange before that. However, where is Bubbles now? Bubbles is still going strong. He's now aged 38, still living at the Centre for Great Apes. Chimps can live up to 60, so he's still in his prime, although he appears very different now, with a grey beard and a physically imposing demeanour.
Oh, God.
He has carried over Michael Jackson's hatred of the press and refuses to look at cameras, and will even spit water when he's angry at them. Generally, though, he does seem to be very happy and living a normal life, although one of captivity. But one exception to this, though, is that he's now an occasional artist, selling his works to support the sanctuary that he lives in, and he's not actually that bad. You can support the sanctuary and Bubbles in particular by going to the centerforgreatapes.org.
We need a Bubbles painting.
Well, they cost about $570 if you want one, so...
Change my mind.
Yeah.
We'll just make our own.
Now, the centre never told Bubbles of Michael's death, or have shown him any pictures of his former roommate in order to make sure that he acclimatises to life in the sanctuary as much as possible. 10 months after Michael's death, his other sister, LaToya Jackson, visited Bubbles. Would you like to see that?
Yes.
Bubbles? Yes. Hi, Bubbles. Hi. Hi, Bubbles. You know I miss you. I haven't seen you in ages, Bubbles. Do you remember me? Bubbles? Do you remember me, Bubbles? You're looking like you do. Do you, Bubbles? 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 Oh, I want to kiss you. I want to hug you, and I know I can't because you're so big. I know. I think you remember me, don't you? Yes, you do. Bubbles. Bubbles. You remember me, don't you? Bubbles. Bubbles. I miss you, Bubbles.
So that's quite sad, really.
That was kind of heartbreaking, but like kind of endearing, and I don't know how to. It's so sad.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it might be her sort of processing as well, 10 months after our brother's death.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, luckily Bubbles has ended up in the best place for him.
His enclosure looks a lot nicer than I thought it would when you first described where he went.
It's lovely, that facility. There's more footage of it in the documentary.
Yeah, that makes me less sad about it. Yeah.
But it's obvious looking back that Bubbles should never have been a family pet.
No, never.
But if Michael hadn't adopted him, he would most likely have been subjected to a lifetime of animal testing.
Yeah, it's horrific.
Which is a different way of looking at it, so, you know. But after Jackson's death, his other animals were taken and put into sanctuaries and zoos around the United States. Madonna the python and his alligators ended up in a rather famous roadside zoo in Oklahoma. Any guesses why that zoo is famous?
Because it has Michael Jackson's animals in it?
No, for a very different reason.
Oh, God.
It is the GW Exotic Animal Park, famous for being run by the Tiger King himself, Joe Exotic.
You are kidding.
Nope.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Now, the alligators, this is the most Joe Exotic sentence ever, the alligators unfortunately died in a fire, which was featured in the Tiger King documentary, supposedly when there was an arson attack on his facility.
Yes, I remember
which
that.
may or not have been started by Joe Exotic. The Jackson estate that it says that it cannot be verified that these were Jackson's gators. However, multiple sources have pointed to the fact that this is the case. So, we had a bit of a rarity on DSR, which is one of these ending on a very upbeat note. We've got, an animal that's, safe and happy and everything's good. But what do you think? What do you think of all of this, about this story about Bubbles the chimp?
I thought it was going to be, I remember asking you this question last week, what happened to Bubbles? He was such a big part of the Jackson, what do you call it? The Jackson
image, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything, the brand.
And I always wondered, I know they get violent because, as you mentioned about chimps ripping faces off. I think you're referring to the case of Travis the chimp.
Yeah.
And that infamous phone call. Yeah, but I knew that they got violent, and I wondered, where would such a big celebrity's animal go? Mm-hmm. Luckily, Bubbles went, somewhere nice.
It's a strange thing that there are these facilities, not necessarily just in Florida, but they're full of quote-unquote famous animals, ones that have been used in the
it's basically the entertainment industry.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's part of he's just part of an image, really. Which is sad, but like you said, he was bred to go to the lab, so I feel like he had a much nicer life than he was destined for.
I think so. There's been various accusations thrown across the years that maybe he was mistreated or he was beaten, but there's nothing that seems to actually corroborate that. And
well, that could also be true, because you could see him getting out of hand, living in a house with others and them getting frustrated with him. And obviously, I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that he got,
It's not. There's nothing that suggests that, though, from any official sources, including the Centre for Great Apes themselves. I don't think if they suspected it, they necessarily would have allowed LaToya Jackson to meet him necessarily. They very much, that is the only piece of publicity or anything that they've done when it comes to it. I mean, when Michael's death happened, they were reportedly inundated with phone calls, people wanting to know if they'd told Bubbles that Michael was dead, or can we tell Bubbles live on air? Can we interview
That is so...
chimp?
First of all, it's silly. Second of all, it's just horrible. There's any way to spin a freaking story. It's so stupid.
I mean, you say that, but do you remember when Robin Williams died? Mm-hmm. And he had a very... he had a relationship with a gorilla. That sounds like
a relationship with a gorilla? I don't think he did, Chris.
Well, he was very close to a gorilla that he'd met a couple of times, and they spoke sign language together. And they told the gorilla that Robin Williams had died, and the only response back was just sad.
Oh my gosh, that is
nothing comes
horrible.
However,
why are you smiling?
I'm just thinking about it.
I know.
So that is the tale of Bubbles the chimp and his relationship with Michael Jackson. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm just happy that you have been able to answer a question that I've always wondered about, but never Googled. I don't know why. I'm so happy to know the story of Bubbles, and that basically Bubbles was responsible for Michael getting his own place in Neverland, and like he was actually a big element of Jackson's sort of life. That's just really crazy to think. Like he did. I mean, back then when he lived with it in his family's place, the monkey could have got too much for him, and then he could have gave him up. But no, I mean and the part that he's in the studio with annoying Freddie Mercury. Like this story is just full of like beautiful visuals. Like it's amazing to think about. Like what a time. What a time.
That the song that they recorded together wasn't released until 2014,
Really?
years after both of their deaths.
Why is that then? Was it just not good, or like it didn't make the cut?
It's whatever. It's not a great song, to be honest. But Freddie Mercury went on to just cut Michael out of it and just release it himself on his solo album.
Ah, okay.
And then later on, Brian May acquired the tapes from a Jackson library, and then they mixed it together and put it out on a Queen anniversary thing.
That's a fun side story. But just the image of him asking Bubbles for advice and opinions on, so what did you think of that, Bubbles? And Freddie Mercury was like, who gives a fuck what the monkey...
the bass was too high on that one?
Is there too much treble?
Treble. Now, Bubbles, should I do or Shimon?
Maybe Bubbles could have done a yee-hee. I think he could have mustered a yee-hee.
I think he could. Well, he learned how to moonwalk, so...
I can't believe... we have to put a video of him moonwalking on Instagram because I've never seen Bubbles moonwalk.
I mean, I say moonwalk. It's more like he's walking backwards.
Oh, but that's still cute, though.
So thank you very much for listening to today's dystopian simulation radio broadcast. We hope you'll join us next time, and we hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to check out the archives, and until next time, see ya.
Bye.
Ooh.